Bob's Burgers is one of my most favourite TV shows, but there's one big mystery in the show that isn't really hugely talked about or even mentioned in the show. Where's Jimmy Pesto's wife? And where's Jimmy Jr.'s and Andy and Ollie's mother? Today I hope to answer that question. So let's start off with what we know. This is Jimmy Pesto. He owns Jimmy Pesto's, and in fact he isn't even Italian and his last name isn't Pesto. We know he is father to Jimmy Jr. and Andy and Ollie. We also know that Jimmy Jr. is around about Tina's age, and we know that Andy and Ollie are around Louisa's age, giving a 5-year age gap between the twins and Jimmy Jr., which in the Belch family would have been filled by Jean. But the thing that gets me is the 5-year age gap. 5 is quite a lot for an age gap between children and not have another child in there. But this makes me think that Andy and Ollie were a last chance, last hope child. If this doesn't work, then they don't work as a couple. And then I think, obviously, they had Andy and Ollie, and then I think they got divorced. Now, it has been confirmed in the show that Jimmy Pesto and this mystery woman are officially divorced, given that we have seen Jimmy Pesto's living place and there is no sign that she is there, and it has been hinted at that they do like an on and off kind of thing with school. One of the most popular theories is that Ginger, Linda's friend, is the mother, but I don't think this is true. Andy and Ollie and Jimmy Jr. both go to Wagstaff, and we know Ginger lives far away, so far away that she has to drive in for Linda to actually meet up together. So that doesn't strike me as a very suitable decision to have your children for you to live in a very far away place, but yet you're still able to get your children to the same school that they go to when they're at their dad. So that makes me think that she lives in the community and that she lives fairly close to Jimmy Pesto and the school. So that makes me think that Ginger isn't the mother. And I also think we haven't seen her at all in the series. I don't think it's going to be real that this character was her. And obviously I do think there is a chance that they could reveal her. Obviously we didn't think we would ever see Bob's mum, but yes, we have seen her in a flashback. So maybe in later seasons she might come back as a little side character. So if I think that, what do I think happened between Jimmy Pesto and this mystery woman? This is what I think happened. Now, I'm going to refer to her as Miss Pesto for the duration of this, so yeah. I think Jimmy Pesto met Miss Pesto at some place, it doesn't really matter where they met. They fell in love and then decided to start up a restaurant. Now, I think Miss Pesto might have been a chef, possibly either of Italian descent, or was either trained in Italian cuisine. That's why it's an Italian restaurant. And I think Jimmy Pesto was front of house doing bar work, crowd work, making people feel comfortable. I think he would really thrive at that kind of job. I think they just used his name just for ease, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe he was the one who took out the loan, so they decided to do it in his name. I think maybe 1 years go by, and then Jimmy Pesto's gets quite popular, and they're doing very well for themselves. I also think along this time, Bob and Linda move in, and obviously we know from a flashback Linda is pregnant during this, when they actually buy the restaurant through the film. So I also think, given the age between Tina and Jimmy Jr., obviously I think Miss Pesto was also pregnant around this time. I think she had time off to obviously recover from giving birth and to look after Jimmy Jr. I think she probably took maybe 1 to 2 years, and I think Jimmy Pesto was in charge during this period of time. I think they didn't put him into any form of care. I think she looked after him and left it all to Jimmy to basically run. But then I also think during this time Jimmy got greedy. Obviously, I think he started off in a good place. He had just had a new baby. I think he wanted to save up for it, make sure if he wanted to do anything in his life that he was able to do it. So he saved up money, and then he saved up until it turned into greed, and then turned into getting cheaper glasses, getting cheaper tables, getting cheaper food, and then getting cheaper staff. I think the customers who had known Jimmy from when Miss Pesto was there came back, and they obviously didn't know the difference, and Jimmy Pesto was making a lot of money. I think Miss Pesto comes back from her 2 to 3 year break and then realises what Jimmy has actually done. I think she has an argument. Obviously, I think she was the chef, and obviously she's probably very mad about having cheaper cooks and cheaper food. I think they probably had some kind of argument over it. Jimmy wasn't willing to settle, probably said how he made it so successful without her, and how her qualities of having good food did not matter. I think she got angry, stormed out, and then headed over to Bob's Burgers. I think she sat down, had a burger, and talked to Bob and Linda. I'm not sure quite when, but I think they probably have Tina and probably have Jean at this point, and I think Linda would talk to them how they're able to have a family and still have the same qualities, having good quality and interesting food. And I think she kind of missed that, and how her restaurant is not like that anymore. I think maybe she explains the situation, or a brief version of the situation, to Linda, and I think she kind of said something like, try and work things out. So I think she goes back to Jimmy Pesto's and tries and does a bit of compromise. Maybe she tries working out with the food and tries to make it a bit better, and maybe get a bit more high quality things in slowly and secretly. And I think Jimmy Pesto probably didn't allow her to do this. I think he stood down firm on the fact that he made this restaurant successful with cheap things, and I think this carried on for years and years and years until she said, I want a divorce. I think Jimmy, being cheap, didn't want this to happen. He knew divorce would be expensive, so he compromised and said, okay, let's not get a divorce, let's go to couples counselling or something like that. And I think through that they finally had Andy and Ollie. Like I said, I think they were a bit of a last chance child, a make or break child, and obviously we know that Andy and Ollie broke them, and that probably very soon after they got a divorce. I think they probably did something along the lines of you have them one week, I have them the next week, since we've seen the children work in the restaurant. And yeah, that's how I think Jimmy Pesto and Mrs. Pesto got divorced. And that is what I think happened to Mrs. Pesto and Jimmy Pesto, and why we have not seen her in the series yet. Now, I do have a theory on how this relates to Bob's Burgers. To Bob and Bob's Burgers. I think Bob's Burgers is a bit of a representation to Jimmy. Bob is everything that Jimmy couldn't have. He has a family, a wife who loves him, and Jimmy doesn't. And obviously, I theorise, Jimmy's ex-wife has a lot of the same values as Bob, so that probably does not help in any way, shape or form. And I think that's why Bob is often a big target for Jimmy and why he bullied him so often. And that's my theory on Jimmy Pesto's wife. What's yours? Bye.